Canon would like to welcome Jim Wilson to this session, and we want to talk about fatherhood. I want to begin by asking you to comment on God's statement in Deuteronomy about the sins of the fathers are visited to the third and fourth generation, but to thousands, assuming thousands of generations of those who know and love God.
Love and obey God.
Love and obey God. How do you understand generational blessings, first in Scripture and then in what you've observed?
Well, first, the Scripture says later in Ezekiel that the sons will not be judged by their father's actions.
Right.
So it doesn't say there that great-grandson is going to have to pay for great-grandfather's sins.
Right.
But it is saying that sin flows downhill.
Right.
That goes from generation to generation. You just teach the children. The children obey or imitate their fathers. That's a given. And if the father's not good, he gets imitated. And in the same way, if showing love to thousands of generations in there who love me and keep my commands, and that's also imitation.
Okay.
And it's not only imitation, but that's the major issue there is people imitate their fathers.
All right. So, and they imitate their fathers negatively to 3 and 4 generations, but the mercy of God intervenes and God
turns them around.
And imitation carries on for...
Yes, but here's a difference here. You suppose you're in the 3rd or 4th generation of bad news.
Right.
And you say, well, I'm going to leave home, become a Christian, marry a Christian, do it right.
Right.
You leave home, become a Christian, marry a Christian, do it wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Just have a Christian version of bad news. Christian version of bad news.
That's right. So really, in order to turn this around to 1,000 generations, it's best if you go back a generation or two and fix those 2 generations.
Okay.
Because generations overlap.
All right, so let me follow up on that. So let's say you're at the tail end of 3 and 4 generations of bad news. The temptation is to erase the board and start over.
That's right.
Move to another city, take another name, and try and fix things downstream from you. You're saying you have to fix things upstream.
You have to fix things upstream because the generations overlap. They influence you. Kids who don't have grandparents, they hurt because of lack of it.
Now I know that I've heard you teach many times on telling children who want to fix things as much as is possible with them upstream to make an effort, not to just to write everybody off.
Right.
But you've taught to write fathers a respect letter and write mothers a love letter. Could you talk a little bit about things you've seen when people have tried to obey that way?
Oh, yes. It's been a wonderful response. One fellow is told to leave home when he's 16, and father said, I never want to see you again. Leave home. So the kid left home, 16, became a Christian, was a PhD student in economics at WSU. Mm-hmm. And he heard this when we had the Delta House. Mm-hmm. And he wrote 2 letters, one to his father, one to his mother. It took about 4 days to write each letter, so he sent them separately, but they arrived on the same day back in Dakota someplace. And they were on the verge of divorce, living in separate bedrooms. And they saw their letters addressed to them, so they took their own letter, went to their bedroom, read their own letter, came back and traded letters, and went back and read the letter to the other person. And the father came out and said to his mother, I'm flying out to Pullman to see my son. And I heard this in the fall. He said, since I learned this last summer, I've seen my father since the first time since I was 16. Mm-hmm. And one man who I was teaching at the...
Let me just stop there. That sort of thing, when there's reconciliation, like in Malachi, the hearts of the fathers to the children, the hearts of the children to the father. When that sort of thing happens upstream, you're far more likely to be able to set a pattern for worthy imitation downstream.
Yes.
Okay, you're going to tell another.
Well, just another one. Sidney Duncombe was a political science professor, and when I first met him, he was a liberal person when we first moved to town. Later found out he was the faculty representative for the Presbyterian group. What was it called? Seekers.
Yeah.
And I spoke on this to the Seekers. He was present. And he said to me, he said, do you think I should write a letter to my father? I said, boy, it wouldn't hurt. So I saw him later. He said, I didn't hear from my father, but I got a letter from my mother and said, when your father read your letter, I've been married to him for 60 years. And it's the first time in my life I've seen tears in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So fathers are emotional people, but you don't know it unless they lose their temper.
Right.
But they respond to emotion, and they respond to love and respect.
Okay. And that's why God says this is the first command with a promise.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Thank you.